Severance fans, Season 2, Episode 4 has new lore drops, beached seals, forbidden love, my old coworker, and good old team building.
How's it taste, mother?
What is this, snow? Outside? I'm Jared B., the reluctant innie of JBuck. Just get into it. Kicking things off, well, we're not in Kansas anymore, as Irving dings into a frozen tundra, wearing what looks like a Russian-style Ushanka and jacket combo. Looking up at Mark, who is standing on what appears to be the very same cliffside that appears when refiners hit 100% on a given file, a potential clue they are in the computer.
In the computer. It's so simple.
Now, with him very much framed above Irving, almost like a Christ-like figure, I instantly thought of the Christ the Redeemer statue in Rio de Janeiro, and, for you nerds out there, it's very Dune 2-like.
Listen, Arcade!
This very much symbolizes Mark is special, almost held like a Christ-like figure in the eyes of Lumen, as he's in Kier's position. Heck, he could even be like the second coming of Kier, or some, mumbo-jumbo that I'll clear up a little bit later. What I love about the premise of this episode is that from a workplace satire, this is just an elaborate team-building adventure. It's essentially Lumen's version of an escape room lunch break team bonding activity in real-life corporate America. I'm sure a handful of you know exactly what I'm talking about. So when looking at this episode with that lens, everything is very pedestrian, but so cleverly done. Because like any escape room, you start with the rules. Here it's Milchick giving an ominous description of the mission at hand. The goal, find the forbidden fourth appendix, and hints or clues are supplied, alluding to the creepy twins of our MDR team, pointing them on the right path. As they approach the television set to begin this so-called orbed bow, the outdoor retreat team building occurrence, which if you do rearrange the letters, it does spell robot. Now, interestingly enough, robot derived from the Czech noun robota, meaning forced labor. An obvious nod to, severed employees and potential theories that androids or robots may be amongst their ranks. Robot was first used in the 1920 Karl Kapek play RUR, later learning that it actually came from his brother, Joseph Kappel, who was a Cubist painter. So many details because if you remember, Rifkin also has Cubist paintings. Lastly, Czechoslovakia was under Soviet rule from 1948 to 1989. A subtle clue to a later discussion, as an 8-bit version of the Kier hymn plays.
Kier, brilliant one, Kier.
Milchick mentions with the blessing of your Audis the next few days, blah blah blah. Basically, MDR was given mandatory overtime, and they're working the weekend. Also explains why Milchick and Miss Wong don't have tents. They went home for the night. It is a Saturday and a Sunday. Now, the reason Milchick is doing all of this from an innie care perspective is because innies are obsessed with the outside world, and this is their way of experiencing it. In episode 1, Gwen is asking Mark about the outside world, specifically the sky. Episode 2 has the new intro featuring balloons floating upward, which also showed up in episode 1. Episode 3 has the goat man talking about stargazing, and this episode, Milchick straight up just says it to the camera.
This Ortbo is in response to your desire to see the outside world.
There may be a deeper meaning, but the surface level reason is innies are prisoners and want to experience the wonders of an outie world. They follow their MDR pal clues, end up in Scissor Cave, obtain the forbidden fourth appendix, and follow in Dieter Egan's footsteps. I'll talk about him in a little bit as they read aloud beautifully, just wonderfully crafted written words from this Egan fairy tale that amount to basically a boy jazzing off in the woods. Yeah, Dieter Egan was cranking his Lil Soulja Boy. Take another listen and imagine.
Dieter became that night an instrument of nature.
And nature played Dieter with elegance.
Now here's the catch. None of this episode, and probably any of the severed floor, is real. This entire thing is a simulation or shared psychosis or hallucination. Follow me because this is going to be a trip. First, they all wake up on the frozen tundra with the same elevator ding, the same we've seen time and time again, but, it's usually in an elevator. Surprisingly, various pieces of this episode were subtly foreshadowed in previous episodes. We already mentioned the Kier painting looking over the cliffside at the large lake. The new Lumen is Listening video features love between Mark and Helly, as we see the pair had 2 tickets to Tuna Town in this episode. Irving goes on a weird and scary vision quest, mirroring him being terrified of the mirrors. Helly being drowned at the end of this episode is her bobbing for pineapples. Expanding further outward, Dylan mentions the world has gone to shit, and we're up there just punching eels in the sea, alluding to the weird seal carcass. Heck, I'll expand this out even further. I don't even think the outie world, like Kier, is even real. Because Dylan's house looks entirely different from Season 1 to Season 2. And Dieter is a new Lumen lore drop, but yet in Episode 2, when Milchick is hardcore girl with the dragon tattooing, we see a billboard specifically mentioning Dieter's brother.
Oh shit! Oh shit!
None of this is real. Okay, maybe some of it, but we as viewers have been bamboozled because 2 more pieces of this puzzle open up an even bigger can of conspiracy. Milchick's Wittgenstein rabbit, which is a philosophy tool that begs the concept of aspect perception, raising questions about the nature of reality and perception. In this case, you may see a rabbit, but then your perception may change and you see a duck. Essentially the ability to view things differently. The rabbit didn't change, your mind just chose to see the duck. So, for example, are the severed floor offices and hallways really a Lumen workspace, or is our aspect perception skewed? The second piece that blows everything out of the water is the file name on Irving's supernatural glitching computer, Montauk. This name alone leads us on a bonkers ride, so strap in for what a large majority of this episode and Severance as a whole is pulling from: the Montauk Project. This is going to be one big info dump, but tying in a bunch of aspects of Severance, because I no doubt believe that Dan Erickson used this conspiracy as a backbone to this series. Also, if any of this does sound familiar, it's because Stranger Things was born out of this as well, with its original title being called Montauk. However, focusing more on the supernatural elements, whereas I believe Severance is more science fiction. So the Montauk Project was a conspiracy first learned about through the 1992 book, The Montauk Project: Experiments in Time by Preston Nichols and Peter Moon. Things start back in 1942 during the height of World War II. Camp Hero was set up in Montauk, New York as a defensive strategy against the Germans and was disguised as a fishing village, similar to how the town of Kier may be a facade, because we never really see people driving around. After the war, Operation Paperclip, which was a United States intelligence program that basically told German scientists that they could avoid war crimes if they agreed to come to the United States, work for them, share their secrets and information from all of the weird research that they were conducting. As the rumor mill goes, a large majority of them were then stationed at this newly named Montauk Air Force Station, previously Camp Hero, as the Cold War started up, leading into the 1980s, when this so-called Air Force base was supposedly decommissioned in 1981. Now, the torture experiments, all of the details reek of Severance, things we've already seen and things we've theorized. Initially, the test subjects' minds would need to be fractured into pieces to allow easier manipulation. This was done through various physical beatings, psychological stress, starvation, even mentioning attempted drownings. The goal of this was to fracture the mind into various pieces, reprogram them, and piece the person's mind back together while hooked up to various wires and machines. Some pieces were, quote, the awake mind, probably Mark's daily life, and the others were programmed buried deep down. During this, it's estimated that a lot of the test subjects did not survive, tying in with the fact that Dylan says that only 1 in 5 files are completed before expiring. The test subjects are probably dying. I mean, the quieter than normal town of Kier and the massive cemetery in Season 1, Episode 1 hint at this. There were so many goals to these so-called experiments, encompassing almost every aspect of science fiction you can think of. Time travel, mind control, interdimensional portals, sleeper agents and spies, and remote viewing to steal government secrets. To me, the ideographic cards in Season 1 are training instructions to program these sleeper agents, and the Lexington letter mentions a Lumen competitor's truck being exploded, potentially done by the MDR employee Peggy. There were also said to be religious rituals where a child was used as a vessel so some sort of astral entity could inhabit their body. Once they woke up, they were told that so-and-so was their new god, listen to them, and this was a procedure done specifically for the betterment of humanity. It was said humanity was unable to survive for themselves, so control was the easiest option. Mass population mind control. This sounds so much like Kier, his religion, the idea of control, and how all of the severed employees are referenced as children of Kier. Heck, I think all of the Lumen employees that are wearing the raindrop pins are ones that have already undergone this procedure. It would explain why Milchek now has a pin and was gifted the recanonized paintings. They've all been Kierified. Rumors suggest that these techniques then became better, potentially referencing Mark's freshman fluke, and people out in the wild have had this fracturing done without them knowing it. For example, Rickon's weird friends. Another key concept of all of this Montauk madness was the so-called Montauk chair.
The Montauk chair, which many people have read about and heard about, it was able to download thoughts from anyone sitting in that chair, store it into a computer, amplify it, and broadcast it to a specific person, place, or thing.
This is revolving the whole theorized concept the previous Lumen CEOs have been doing. So when the board is talking, this is the CEOs being broadcast. Same when Natalie is gawking at Mr. Milkshake. They are looking through her eyes. Heck, the Felix the Cat cartoon in season 1 literally gave us the answer, with it featuring a king, let's say the current Lumen CEO, being haunted by 7 ghosts, the 7 previous CEOs, taken down into a basement onto a chair that looks way too much like the Montauk chair, and then have their essence sucked out. The answers were literally hidden in plain sight. Going further, the Montauk chair had a digital display, and whatever the person in the chair was thinking about, essentially memories, they could render in real life. This is what OND is printing. Objects thought up by the Egan CEOs and whoever else is strapped to these chairs. It explains then why there's a full goddamn scale replica of Kier's original house. It's his memories, and they're just printing them out. Other small details that tie in with aspects of Severance is that Preston Nichols said that he had a position that was called deputy director, as Lumen has deputy managers. Underground hallways and labs spanning potentially miles with a total of 12 floors, meaning we're going deeper at Lumen. Time travel was used to alter the outcome of the American Civil War, which perfectly ties in with all of the Union uniform paintings featuring Kier. Rumor says that there was some sort of pushback, potential exposure of this project from rogue naval intelligence, which screams Irving's outside persona. There's mentions of cloning, like historical and religious figures, which is kind of an ongoing theory. And after decommission, people claimed that all of the stairwells and escalators to the lower levels were cemented off, just like episode 1 when Mark visits wellness.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
All of this reels in the big old 40-foot radar dish located at the Montauk site, which oddly may tie to our Lumen water tower. So this was allegedly used to transmit high-frequency waves to activate test subjects out in the wild. Apparently, whenever this was used, police in the area said that things got a heck of a lot sketchier than normal, sometimes seeing people frozen in a trance-like state. This could be our Severance chip freeze frame function. Others were sent to the hospital for severe headaches and nosebleeds. Now that kind of sounds like our good old buddy friend from season 1, Petey.
He's dead.
The mystery surrounding the Montauk project, however, does not stop in the 80s or 90s. In July of 2008, a mysterious animal carcass washed ashore only a few miles from this decommissioned site. The interesting thing, which drew the attention of the media, is that this creature did not look like anything known to man. It was almost a mix of a coyote, a raccoon, some sort of sea creature, all decomposing in the heat. The strange-looking exposed skull, almost a beak, is what threw people off. This is then represented in this episode as the weird decomposing seal the group runs across and Irving wants to snack on.
We should eat it.
The long hold on the decomposed head of the seal is a dead giveaway that this is what the creators were referencing. Something that was later described as a hoax in our world, while others suggest that this is even more evidence to the strange dealings in the underground tunnels of the Montauk project. So yeah, that's a majority of what this episode is referencing, but rather I believe that this is actually happening in Severance. The entire severed floor is a facade for some dark, dark shit. My crazy out there theory is that I think no doubt Severance is tackling the Montauk project while it may be happening during the Cold War, which would explain all of the weird, out-of-time tech and cars, either in America or maybe this is a twist and it's all happening in Russia, almost like a secluded Nuketown situation. This doesn't fully explain smartphones though, but it could be some like alternative history twist because there is a lot of Russian objects, nods, and references. The winter outfits in this episode, Gemma teaching Russian literature, Mark's Vostok Soviet-era watch, the Kier stone profile portrait looks like that of Vladimir Lenin, with pineapples potentially being a luxury in this otherwise communist state. The severed employees are originally only allowed, 2 tokens a day, remember? Not to mention this new Dieter Egan fellow, with Dieter meaning Army of the People, with Army of the People potentially alluding to the People's Army, a communist-based military organization often linked to a communist political party. What a banana sandwiches reveal it would be if this show somehow pulls out and Ivan Drago is looming over Mark like,
I must break you.
and then puts him back under the shared psychosis illusion of Lumen. Speaking of this Dieter fella, not much is really known aside from him wanting to be this poor woodsman with his twin brother Kier, him playing his flesh flute in nature, eventually being murdered by Kier, and then drowned at Woe's Hollow, which is hilariously drawn almost like a Candyland-esque map or amusement park. One interesting thing is the mention of love. Love has been referenced multiple times, from episode 1 of the Lumen video showing love, to Ragabi mentioning love during Mark's reintegration, to Kier mentioning his love for his brother unbalanced his judgment, which I interpreted as his 4 tempers.
My love for my twin unbalancing my judgment.
I think love is a crucial part of Kier's revival, something he unfortunately had to sacrifice to, tame these 4 tempers, but is no doubt key to the human soul and life itself. This is where Mark enters the picture. His undying love for Gemma is what Lumen is really after with this so-called Cold Harbor file. Somehow this is the missing piece and why Mark is like the second coming of Jesus for Lumen in their work. Obviously a theory, but I'm curious what you viewers think of this whole love conquers all idea. Before I get into Irving's Vision Quest shenanigans, I'm 99% sure that this guy is reintegrated because his mood is completely different. He's short-tempered, swears much more, he's jumping back and forth between innie and outie. The mysterious phone call about his innie getting the message was no doubt to Ragabi, and explains why she mentions that she's now better at this procedure.
I'm better at it now. I can make it work with you.
Heck, I'll even go further than that and say that he was reintegrated during season 1. Milchick mentions his pay was docked for dozing off in season 1, and then in season 2 when Milchick shows up to his house, he initially brings up money, and here he calls Milchick a mountebank, which is a person who deceives others, especially in order to trick them out of their money. The leading theory on why Irving saw the black goo has been his apparent lack of sleep. Rather, what if that was a clue to his reintegration, and him painting the dark elevators, him remembering things from his innie, and he's trying to piece together information for Ragabi. Going further, if this Montauk project stuff is really happening, he is some sort of military undercover spy working for someone much, much bigger. Anyway, Irving wanders from the group, unfortunately having his torch go out, with it being a clever foreshadowing that his light or soul on the severed floor will be no more. He instead falls asleep on a rock, only to wake up in a world between worlds. I do still think that there's something with sleeping and consciousness, as this bleeds the current world he's in with the MDR reality that they're typically in. To be honest, this is either the shared hallucinations I mentioned earlier, or showing how they are being manipulated in a form of a simulation. Especially since Mark and Irving's echoes and moans are heard by one another, in reality they are probably in a room just a few feet apart from one another. This is where anything is possible, as he approaches his desk covered with flies. Flies symbolize death, evil, heck, even sin.
Help me to release this demon!
I could see people dying from these experiments and rotting in these underground labs. This is where clue after clue, again like an escape room puzzle, fall into place. The file name being Montauk, something we've already mentioned, as he sees an image of Bert, potentially alluding to happy numbers or frolic. And later, when the bride scares the piss out of him and me, these could be the scary numbers or dread. By the way the bride initially is portrayed versus her actual appearance both hits the scary vibes of like The Shining while showing how religious artwork embellishes the truth. The initial screen Irving looks at features a scattering of numbers, but if you look close enough, numbers 8 and 9 are missing from this screen, symbolizing how only 7 of the 9 Lumen CEOs have more than likely been uploaded into this like AI consciousness or simulation, with the current CEO, James Egan, being number 8 and Helena being number 9. There's a subtle sound effect coming from the bride's computer, noting that she has completed a file 100%. On this next screen, the floating numbers are 1s, 4s, 5s, and 7s. And initially, this did not spell out anything, but then I ran it again and realized that it's 1, 5, 7, 1, and 14, which translates into the word Egan. Another escape room puzzle combination, as Irving's computer has a mix of numbers and letters, then spelling out Egan as a face and eye look at him before he wakes up. This tells us so much. The previous Egans are uploaded into some sort of digital landscape, maybe even a whole simulation. This is their way of essentially living forever. Now, with this knowledge, they are no doubt the board, and potentially use other Lumen employees like Natalie and Helly's driver as a physical vessel looking through their eyes like, the characters of being John Malkovich or Inside Out. Part of Kier's goal has been achieved. He's living forever. But escaping this digital landscape is the next problem. As for the actual manifestation of this little gremlin bride, this could solely be a digital creation if they are in a simulation, a shared hallucination, or being from a different reality, leaning harder into the supernatural elements. I know it's honestly all a cop-out with the inclusion of this Montauk project. The show at this point can literally go anywhere. Like anything you think in science fiction, it could go. We can assume these tempers are almost like legendary Pokemon that appear to someone when they've done some heinous stuff, with Chapter 2, Kier and the Thieving Nanny, maybe being the story of dread represented by the old woman. Backtracking a little bit, this has been Helena this entire episode.
Don't be suspicious, don't be suspicious, don't be suspicious, don't be suspicious.
Through all of the lies, deceit, inappropriate laughter, it's finally revealed that this some beach has been a Lumen spy. I'll admit, everyone telling me week to week that I was wrong.
I'm stupid, you're smart, I was wrong, you were right.
Now, some clever clues that point to her being Helena in this episode are everyone saying that they woke up on the frozen lake, despite her saying that she showed up on the cliff, the same spot as Kier Egan in the painting, showing that she is an Egan, along with the facial framing showing that, she's hiding something. She's essentially a Two-Face. The thing everyone's going to be talking about is Helena and Mark eaten up, with the initial setup when Mark looks at the torch saying it's beautiful, Helena meaning shining light. Anyway, after Mark says,
"You're gonna love my nuts,"
the two lay there and Mark suffers from a potential side effect of reintegration, seeing Gemma on Helena's body. Not much more is derived from this scene aside from it being tastefully done and surprisingly hot. Tip of the hat to the director, cast, crew, everyone, well done. My only theory would be, what if Helena is now pregnant after this? It would be a heck of a weird twist on Immaculate Conception and Jesus, while tying in with the baby Kier crawling in the opening credits. Just another theory, but something to definitely be aware of. Rounding out this episode is the massive reveal that Helly was a mole undercover this whole time and Irving is not taking it anymore. Having suspicions of who would be powerful enough to send their Audi to the severed floor. This is almost a reenactment of the Dieter and Kier story from earlier as Irving attempts to drown Helena. Surprisingly, this may tie in with the Severance short story, The Lexington Letter, as Peggy in that story was also told that she had some sort of instance with water at work. Irving sinisterly saying, "Yes, do it, Seth," is honestly grade A delivery.
Yes! Do it, Seth!
As Milchick radios to someone to remove the Glasgow block. This was listed as one of the Severance chip functions back in Season 1, with myself and others theorizing it's related to the Glasgow coma scale. Used in coma patients, it's a system to score, or rather measure, how conscious a patient is, meaning that Helly was essentially put in a coma. Now, with this information, it could work the other way, whereas Miss Casey is in a Glasgow state, as permanently an innie. Irving is sent off to the eternal darkness, as we can only assume his innie is essentially dead on this earth, ending with the perfectly placed elevator music over the credits to show that Irving is taking his last elevator ride back up from the severed floor. And we are done. Seriously, my Audi needs to know the lengths that I'm going to for these breakdowns. I'm in the middle of the frozen tundra in the wilderness. I don't even know what's going on. I didn't get any perks. I better be in the office next week. So if this video gets 50,000 views, maybe I'll get a double perk. So like helping any out. Anyway, feel free to drop all of your thoughts, feelings, theories, and out there ideas on Severance Season 2, Episode 4. I'll be sure to see everyone next week with our Episode 5 breakdown, and maybe I'll get out of this damn cold.
Ooh, okay, bye-bye.